what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, we are now the week of the Olympia. Most of the big names, no matter where they're from, are now here in the States, in Vegas, preparing for the Olympia. One of them being Wesley Vissers. And we got a bunch of updates from Wesley both today and yesterday, now that he's here in Vegas. And Wesley is the guy that's looking to change the narrative this year. Obviously, the narrative last year at the Olympia was Ramon versus Chris Bumstead, and the same the year before that. But this year, Wesley is kind of a fresh name in that conversation for a top 3 spot, a top 2 spot. And he's still riding high off of that hype of both the Arnold Classics, and he seems to show no sign of slowing down. You don't see anything from these updates that indicate that he's going to be anything other than as good as or better than he was at the Arnold Classic. And you don't see from these updates anything other than it looks like this guy has a real chance at doing what he did again at the Olympia as to what he did at the Arnold, which was beating Ramon, beating Breon, beating Urs. Because when you look at these updates, these physique updates, these progress pictures, peak week Wesley Vissers, bodybuilding is a very critiquable sport. But it's hard to look at these updates of Wesley and find a real critique to say, oh, he doesn't look as good here, here, or here as he did at the Arnold. He looks worse or whatever. When you look at these updates, you see an extremely conditioned, an extremely detailed, very, very lean, very vascular, very striated, but also very big, pretty full, and very aesthetic physique. Again, he's a classic guy. You look at these updates and you can't really pick Wesley apart. I think most fans would agree that Wesley is at the top of his game right now. This could be Wesley's peak physique. You know, when you look at some of these pictures, I mean, look at the striations, how deep they are in Wesley's chest, even in poses like the front lat spread. And again, you know, obviously some of these pictures, really crazy, goon lighting, gym lighting where he looks really detailed, but still, from every angle, really. You look at his back, you look at his shoulders, you look at his biceps, you look at his tricep, even in that back double, that twisting back double pose. Every muscle on Wesley's physique is just striated, detailed, ripped. And I would say the only concerning point, which we still haven't really seen him show much of, even though he's shown his quads a couple times now, the glutes and hamstrings are like the one thing that Wesley struggles a bit with, and we haven't really seen much of that at all. But he's basically shown everything else. Front, back, side, quads, and from every angle, just detailed, shredded to the bone. Wesley is very clearly on here. And again, the reason I like to bring it back to the Arnold and say, not only did he beat Ramon, but he beat Breon in Urs at the Arnold too, is because I think that negates a little bit of that argument that it was just because Ramon was off. Well, I see a lot of Ramon fans say that Wesley only beat him because Ramon was off. But I think if you look back to that prior Olympia, before that Arnold, Wesley didn't beat those guys. They beat him, Urs and Breon included. And I don't really think Urs and Breon were that off. But then at the Arnold, he beat all of them. So it wasn't just about Ramon being off. It was, this is a different Wesley. But then we haven't really talked much about Urs at all. And I think a big part of that is obviously, you know, Urs hasn't been posting very many physique updates at all, if really any. And I think also part of that is him being beaten by Wesley at the Arnold, I think, stifled his momentum a little bit going into this Olympia. But he is also here in Vegas with his coach, Stefan, boss of Outlaw, again, who we've talked a lot about. And he's also working with Wesley, which I think is significant. But I think we really got to consider Urs in this conversation still, even though Wesley beat him at the Arnold, and even though we haven't seen much of Urs's physique, because Urs was third at last year's Olympia. He was top 3. So for Wesley to be in that top 3 or top 2 conversation, he's going to have to beat not only Ramon again, But Urs, again. Yes, he beat these guys at the Arnold, but on the Olympia stage, his last Olympia appearance, he was 7th. He wasn't top 3, and now people are having him. I've seen people predict him to win the Olympia. I wouldn't go that far. I really do not think that Chris Bumstead will be beaten this year by anybody. But this is what's so exciting about Wesley at the Olympia this year, going back up against Urs, going back up against Ramon, is, yeah, he's proven it on the Arnold stage, but he hasn't proven it on the Olympia stage yet. And I think if Wesley finds himself beating these guys again at the Olympia and he's in like a 2 or 3 spot when everything's said and done at the Olympia, I think then he really solidifies himself as maybe he's the guy. And then, like I said, when Chris is gone, which could be next year, could be a couple years after that, but when Chris retires, I think Wesley is really setting himself up to be potentially next in line, even if he's able to place top 3 here, even if he doesn't beat Ramon again. I don't think it's really make or break for Wesley. If he goes from 7th last year to 3rd at this year's Olympia, that's still massive. Now, 7th to 2nd would be pretty cool. But like I said, he's not only got to get through Ramon, he's got to get through Urs. Breon was 4th last year. He was also ahead of Wesley at the Olympia, so that's also worth pointing out. Terrence Ruffin was 5th. He's not going to be there this year. And I kind of wonder, will we see anybody slip significantly? There were years where Terrence slipped a few places. There were years where Breon slipped a few places. Could you not only see maybe a guy like Urs or Ramon get beaten by Wesley again, but could you see them slip down out of the top 3? Let me know in the comments below, what are your Olympia predictions for classic physique specifically? Now let's pivot back over to men's open bodybuilding for a second here. We got a bunch more updates from Rafael Brandao. Most of them just simply more variations of the most muscular pose, just several different most musculars, all of them posted today. Obviously, the most muscular is a very impressive pose for Rafael. That's what we talked a lot about in the last video, that last most muscular that he posted in that video, how impressive his most muscular is. But I think of all the updates that I saw of Rafael today, the one that really impressed me the most, aside from all the most muscular shots, was just the straight-on shot of his quads. It's just undeniable at this point. Just the amount of improvements that Rafael has made. Keep in mind, earlier in his career, not even that long ago, just a couple years ago, that was like the biggest criticism of Rafael was his legs are too small. And really, there were people saying Rafael overall, he's just too small for open bodybuilding. He gets overlooked, he gets outsized, he gets outmuscled. So now, that's why you're seeing this new version of Rafael, even what you saw in the most musculars. He's much, much bigger. He's added a lot of size to his frame. But I think one of the places where it's most evident is in his legs. It's undeniable when you look at his quads here. Not only are they crazy separated, he's got a lot of detail and deep cuts, but the size. They are clearly bigger, even than they were at the Arnold, and like way bigger than they were just like a year or two ago. And I said this at the Arnold, and I think I'll be saying it again at the Olympia, that Rafael might be, as far as an open bodybuilder, one of the most improved bodybuilders this year in 2024, as far as bringing a completely new physique than what we were seeing from him in the recent past. And I'm very curious to see how this shakes out. I think the absence of Nick Walker really is going to move up a lot of these other guys that we've talked about. All of them are going to move up, I think, as a result of Nick being out. I think Nick probably would have been around 4th or 5th. So him being gone, realistically, is probably going to move somebody new into that top 6. Everybody moves up a spot, and I think that guy will be Rafael. But let's talk about Nick a little bit more. It's a couple days later after the big announcement from Nick and his coach, Matt Jansen, and still, it's like all everybody is talking about. This is still like the big topic of conversation. Every bodybuilding, fitness channel, whatever, is talking about Nick Walker out of the Olympia. Everybody's weighing in. And it doesn't quite seem like it's getting the reaction that maybe Nick expected or wanted it to. It's overwhelmingly a pretty negative reaction towards Nick and towards Matt. And I actually saw some really good points made. A lot of people had some pretty aggressive videos towards Nick, but I saw a lot of good points made. I still think there's something going on with Nick's health. I still think there's something about his health that they're not telling us in that video, because to me, the video just didn't make sense. The whole Nick thrives in chaos and his life is so good right now thing, it just doesn't make sense. That's why he's not responding, is because he doesn't have chaos. Doesn't make sense. They never give a reason for why his body's not responding. And there's even a part in the video where Matt kind of glosses over it and he says, I don't think the why is important as far as why his body's not responding. And I thought that was weird too. We don't know what his body's not responding to, why is it not responding, and what is the reason for any of this. They don't give a reason. And I think it's got to be something health related. If it's not an injury, it's got to be a health issue. And I hope that they make a new video if it is a health issue. And I hope that they tell the fans this is what it is. Because, like I said, Nick's not obligated to do that. He doesn't have to. But I feel like he has a certain level of responsibility, if it is a health thing, to tell his fans that's what it is. But I saw a lot of really good points, and I think maybe Greg Doucette made the best point, and I think it's the simplest point, but I think it's a really effective one. And that is that Nick is a full-time bodybuilder. That's his only job. So even if you're not going to be at your best, even if you don't feel like you're responding, as a full-time pro bodybuilder, if it's not a health issue, and I think that's a pretty big if, but if it's not a health issue and that's your job, you're a full-time pro bodybuilder, it doesn't matter if you're not going to look your best. Diet harder. Do your best. Show up anyway. And place wherever you place, because that competition, that day, is basically your job for the year. And I think a lot of people also made this other point, which is that most bodybuilders don't get to be Nick Walker. Even if they're a pro bodybuilder, they don't get to be, all I have to do is eat, sleep, and train and, fulfill these sponsorships, which is basically just an Instagram post or an ad in a video. But the vast majority of pros that are not top 3 guys, they've got families, they've got a wife, they've got kids, they've got a real full-time job in addition to bodybuilding. And you see some of these guys that have to travel from all the way halfway across the world to get to the Olympia stage, all these visa issues, all these travel issues, and they still get there, they still show up, and a lot of those guys have jobs, have families, have other responsibilities, and Nick is in this really unique position because he's a top guy, that he doesn't have to worry about any of that. So when you're in that position, yes, it makes it more comfortable for you, but I think that eliminates a lot of the future potential excuses for why you don't compete. If it's not an injury, and if it's not a health issue, it really cuts down on, well, what's your excuse then? Because not a lot of guys are given this opportunity to be just a bodybuilder. You got all these sponsorships, and that's basically all you have to do. Eat, sleep, train, prep for the show. So while I think Greg's video was very aggressive towards Nick, that point that he made I thought was an extraordinarily good point. Nick is in a very privileged position. And if it's not a health issue, if it's not an injury, and if it really is what they're saying, they just don't want to present a subpar Nick Walker, then I do agree that's kind of just a nonsense reason. But I still kind of feel that there is some underlying health thing. There's something that's being left out. There's something we're not being told. And in that case, if it is a health issue, then absolutely I would agree. Nick shouldn't compete. Nick shouldn't risk his health if it is that. But if it is, I think he should tell people. He should tell us. But if it's not that, I think probably the most privileged reason, the most privileged thing someone could say is, well, my life's just not chaotic enough for me to thrive in this prep. When there are so many bodybuilders out there that would probably kill to have a less chaotic life where they could do exactly what Nick gets to do. I don't look good because I don't have enough things to worry about is kind of a crazy thing to say. But I have a feeling we probably will see a follow-up video from either Nick or Matt, because the response to Nick's video has been massive. My home page, like not my subscription feed, but my home page on YouTube on this channel, even my other channels that aren't bodybuilding related, it's like every recommended video on the homepage is something about Nick Walker. I mean, everyone is still talking about it. So I think, hopefully, we'll get a follow-up video, maybe a little bit more clarification. But it does seem really odd. It seems like something's missing to me. It really seems like they're leaving something out as far as the real reason. But let's continue this conversation about open guys. Moh Fooda posted an update. And there's a lot of conversation right now about Moh potentially being a top 10 guy this year, about having a really good first Olympia. Really unique physique on Moh. Really great quads, really small waist, crazy taper from the front. I still think his back needs a little bit of work for him to be one of the top guys, but structure-wise, shape-wise, he's got the frame, he's got the potential, he's got the blueprint to be one of the top guys. I don't know if it'll be this year, but again, this is just another video where you see Boss of Outlaw. He's coaching everybody, man. This guy has taken over. It's honestly really impressive. When I see that he's coaching one of these guys that's in the conversation for a top guy, I'm like, well, okay, that guy's probably going to do pretty well, because this guy, Stefan, has really built quite the name for himself and quite the reputation. He doesn't really miss very often. These guys that he coaches, they come in amazing. But do I think Moh could find himself in the top 10 here? I do. I actually do. I really don't know about top 6. Like I said before, I think for sure Hottie, Derek, Sampson, they're all going to be in there again. I think Andrew Jack will be in there. Nick Walker's now out. But Hottie, Derek, Sampson, Andrew, Brandon Curry will probably more than likely be in that top 6 as well. So there's 5 guys there. And so in that conversation for 6th, or the last guy in the top 6, you've got guys like Hunter Labrada, Martin Fitzwater, Rafael Brandao, William Bonac, Moh Fooda. But you look at the update of Hunter Labrada. Hunter posted an update yesterday. Hunter looks really impressive. He looks like he's in really good shape, but then again, that show that he did in Italy was kind of an underwhelming version of Hunter for a lot of people. And I think he looked a lot better in the updates going into that show than he did on stage. And I think that kind of slowed down the Hunter Labrada momentum. But when I look at this update, I think he looks more impressive than Moh. And I think he looks more like a comparable to Martin, comparable to Rafael. I think these are going to be really good call-outs, actually. Even if these guys aren't in the conversation for the win, I think they all have such impressive physiques, like a Hunter, Rafael, Martin, Moh Fooda call-out. I think would be very entertaining to see. And I think more than likely that will be a call-out that we get. And I feel like we probably also should have Jon De La Rosa in that conversation of a call-out like that to figure out like 6th through 10th place, because Jon did beat Moh Fooda. And I think Jon is kind of comparable to these guys too, in the sense that he's a little bit shorter, he's a compact guy, and I think he would be good in a call-out with like a Hunter, a Martin, etc. I think all those guys are around the same height. And again, even though a lot of people, and bodybuilders in particular, seem kind of pissed at Nick Walker dropping out, they've got to also realize this is an opportunity here with Nick being gone. Because let's be real, everybody was expecting Nick Walker to be in a 4th or 5th place spot, most likely. He would have been top 4, top 5, if he showed up and if his body was quote-unquote responding. But with him being gone, this is an opportunity for all these guys, a lot of these guys that are looking to make a name for themselves at this year's Mr. Olympia, move up into a really top position. Nick's absence here is big. And I don't think it's necessarily something to be mad about. It's a good opportunity to cash in on if you're one of these guys like Hunter, like Martin, like Rafael. I think these are the guys that are going to benefit from Nick being gone. And who knows, maybe if he really looked as bad as it seems like he's making it sound like he looked, maybe he wouldn't have been top 4 or top 5. Maybe it wouldn't have mattered if he's there or not. I mean, I have a really hard time envisioning Nick out of the top 6 at this point. I feel like he'd have to be pretty bad to be out of the top 6, but maybe he was. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon, and there will be a bunch more Olympia coverage coming up for you guys this week, so stay tuned. And as always, I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at NICKS&P, my Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power, my secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.